Outdoors. I'm your host, Jack Greenstock, joined as always by an amazing panel. And pass it over first to Spartan Grown.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks for having me again. And thanks, everybody. Here, I'm Spartan Grown. You can find me on Instagram, all one word, Spartan Grown, no spaces. And the only other place you're going to be able to get a hold of me is just through email, spartangrown@gmail.com. Those are the two places. Don't believe the fakers out there and don't buy anything from. I don't sell anything either. So if anybody contacts you looking like me, there's been a couple of scammers and it keeps getting brought up to me. So I keep bringing it up to try to help the situation.
I've been seeing more scammers lately, unfortunately. One of them was like, hey, send me a word that starts with T and ends with Y, and I'll send you $1,000 or whatever. Or like the one person was so bold because enough people just weren't responding to that they just DM'd me like, hey, you're part of my blessing giveaway. Send me your Cash App or some other link, and I'll send you $600. And I was like, did you mean to send me this, or like, did you get hacked? And they're like, oh, I meant to send you, like, it's blessing, brother. And it was like very poorly written English. And I like looked at the dude's page and he's a grower. And I was like, I think this dude got hacked. So I like posted it and I was like, hey, everybody, heads up, don't fall for this stuff. It's definitely phishing. But anyway, that said, next up, Matthew Gates.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matthew Gates. I'm an integrated pest management specialist, and I have been for about 12 years now. You can find my content, professional inquiries, you can contact me at zenthanol.com. You can find my content educational on Zenthanol, the YouTube channel, which is also what I'm commenting about in chat. And also you can find me on my Instagram at SyncAngel and on Twitter at SyncAngel.
We're happy to have you back. And last but not least, I'm sure we might have some late joiners, but Dr. MJ.
Yeah, hey guys, Dr. MJ Coco from cocoforcannabis.com. I am excited to come on. We're a little bit short-staffed, but we got the core group here, so we should be able to cover things. And yeah, welcome to Chatters, and thanks, Jack, for showing up and doing this show every week.
Always happy to be here. Noah the Grower said he's got a family birthday, so he won't be here this week. And I think Kyle of Pure Breeding also said he won't be joining us. Aaron, also busy, but I haven't heard from Aaron, or not Aaron, I just said Aaron. I haven't heard from Brandon or a few of the others.
Brandon's also busy.
Show up. Oh, okay. So Brandon might not be here, but likely will not be here. And then Tao is usually going to be here, and he just shows up a few minutes late because he's a busy guy. But we're always happy to have him whenever he does show up. But with that said, before the show, Spartan Grown talked a little bit about one of my favorite, I can call it historic now because it's been around for so long. And as I say that, Tao jumps in, but the hash bash. So I'm going to pass it over to you. And I guess you could just give us a little history. Do you know how long it's been running for? And then I'll pass back to Tao to let him introduce himself.
Yeah, yesterday actually was a special one because it was the 50th anniversary. So it's I don't know if it's the longest running cannabis protest, but it's up there. It's on the list for sure.
One of the earliest that I'm aware of for sure. And I mean, to be in Michigan, which wasn't necessarily cannabis friendly at all 50 years ago, says a lot. And not only was it just cannabis, it was hash, like hash bash. It says it right there in the name. So that's pretty awesome and cutting edge, because I mean, hash is kind of coming to the forefront in the modern scene nowadays. I would say it's got a lot more appreciation than 50 years ago. That's for sure in some circles. But with that said, we got the American one here with us. Welcome, Tao. Struggling to find the mute button, but it's all right. We still love
Hello, Jack and panel and everyone in chat. It's good to be here. And yeah, we'll leave it at that.
He's the American one on Instagram, the American _with_Akeens. But yeah, we were just talking a little bit about the hash bash. Spartan mentioned that he went. It was pretty cold from what I understand over there. What kind of temperatures were we talking?
So it was like 41, 42 degrees, something like that. I had doubled up layers, so I was pretty warm. I knew what I was getting into, so it wasn't terrible for me. And the sun came out and it wasn't super windy. If it would have been windy, it'd have been bad. But there were still a lot of people showed up. Originally, the hash bash kind of got started, and it was a protest when John Seclair got arrested for 2 fucking joints. And he ended up, instead of taking plea deals, he kept fighting it all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Michigan Supreme Court ended up ultimately ruling that it was against the law to throw somebody in jail for that, for 2 joints. And so it's like a commemoration of that event in Michigan every year at 12 o'clock at the U of M Diag on, it used to be a certain day, but now I think it's it might be the first Saturday of every April. But yeah, so it's kind of like a protest, and usually have speakers there that talk about how cannabis helped them in their lives, and usually you get big names, people trying to help like normalize it. And I'm not kidding you, I was still nervous about that. In fact, I'll just tell you the whole story. When I get there, I'm not a big fan of the giant crowd that packs in up by the stage. So I kind of head towards the back where there's just big flagpole, and it's easy to tell people where you're at because there's just gigantic flagpole with an American flag. And it's cool just to sit there and look at the flag when you're high as fuck. I enjoy it. And so I'm back by the flagpole, and I stood in the grass next to where there's a walk, a walkway, a sidewalk. And I kid you not, I just lit up. I wish Brandon was here. I just lit up some limelight from Brandon, and that I grew earlier. And I took 2 hits off of it, maybe 2 hits. And from the right of me, walking down the walk, are these 2 police officers walking side by side, and they stop right in front of me. And then they turn their back to me and look towards the stage. And I'm standing right behind them with this cone that I just lit up. And I don't remember who it was. Somebody from the Bros Show was standing next to me. And I had a backpack over my shoulder. I just kind of put my backpack down on the ground and let it fall down next to her leg. I said, if I get arrested, fucking get my backpack, please. I said, but I'm going to smoke this fucking joint because I just started it. And I was a little nervous, but they stood there for a little bit, and then they just fucking moseyed on past. So kudos to the police of Ann Arbor. They didn't hassle anybody there smoking.
You'd hope they're aware after 50 years of what's going on that particular day, and
yeah,
not fuck with the guy for a couple joints, bringing it all the way back to the throwing it back to 50 years ago.
Yeah,
it'd be quite ironic if they did actually hassle you for that, especially now with the state of legalization that Michigan has come towards. So it's good to hear that you got to link up with some of the Bro Show. I know that on the late sesh last week, Red Setter Farm did a good job kind of going over some of his past experiences and what to expect. So that was cool to listen into. And I know Medical Mondays has one of the I think he's part of the organization of Hash Bash, or
he's the organizer of Hash Bash, of the Hash Bash Cup.
So that's a separate thing. Okay.
Yep.
So
it happened at the same time. It was like the whole weekend. So the Hash Bash Cup was Friday through Sunday through today. And the Hash Bash itself happened just pretty much Saturday or yesterday. And the cup is just offsite. It's close. It's still close, but it's at a hotel that they pretty much closed the whole hotel down. So you can smoke in all areas except for the rooms, which is amazing that that's a thing. I heard, I didn't go to that, but I heard that Mendo Dope showed up like as a surprise guest yesterday, last night sometime, and performed. There was a bunch of performances, but that's just one of them. But that was like the surprise one that nobody knew about. So that was pretty cool, I thought. I haven't heard of Mendo being in Michigan ever, so that was cool to hear that they came out.
I'm happy to hear. I'm a big fan of their music, and they grow some really dank weed. You can get on the commercial market here in California if you're lucky. But yeah, super cool that they're supporting. And I was going to say the hotel thing, that's actually kind of the plans for Vegas later this year. I was talking to some of the homies in Vegas, and I was asking them about like green events and like cannabis events, because I want to do the Cheap Home Grow meetup and cup or whatever later this year. And I'm trying to narrow down what hotel we're going to do it at. And like, I want to be open about it because it's legal in Vegas to smoke. So a lot of these places are catering to having green friendly events. So I was kind of getting some info, and I guess one of the hotels there is super green friendly, and it's a smaller hotel, but they'll like rent out basically like the whole venue if we get enough people interested. So I'm going to try and nail down some dates and not overlap with any other events that are going on in our community or other ones in Vegas. So that way we can get down and have a good time and come together and meet each other in person, because a lot of us haven't yet. Some of us have, but it's definitely cool to link up in person.
No, I'm really excited about that, Jack, for real, because one of my favorite things ever is just doing these events, going to these events so I can meet people that these people I see in chat. Or there was a gentleman yesterday that came up to me and he said, hey, are you Spartan Grown? I said, yeah. He goes, oh, I'm a big fan. I listened to your show. You see, he doesn't even watch the show. He listens at work. He's an engineer, but he can put his headset on at work, and listen about how to grow weed. And he's told me all about how he grew his, I think he was on his 3rd harvest or something. He handed me a joint of GG4, one of my favorite strains. So that was fucking awesome. And I handed him a joint of Spartan glue that I had with me. So I said, here, I don't even grow this anymore. This is the actual last of the flower of my last grown Spartan glue plant. I want you to have it. So yeah, I handed that to him. It was super cool. even though, like I said, he didn't watch the show, he's still like, because we do the podcast thing, he's able to get the information, and it makes a positive benefit in his life. And I just love that shit. And I get out here in Michigan, but I don't get out of the state much. So that'd be cool to get out there and meet some more people.
For sure. And I actually feel bad. For a little while, I was putting the podcast on the back burner. I thought it was just people who like listen to a little bit here on YouTube and then they'd go and listen to like the whole show or whatever. But there is a entirely separate audience. Like they're two different crowds entirely. And when I stopped posting, there'd be at least 10 disgruntled listeners like, hey, dude, like I listened to this at work. I'm like, can't you just like, I don't know, YouTube to MP3 it? Or like, you know, I have YouTube Premium, so I can just listen in the background or whatever. And I think it's worth paying for or whatever. But with
like,
that said, I'm happy to put it on the podcast because some people, that's the only way they even know that the show is still going. A lot of people thought the show stopped. So when I started re-uploading it, they're like, I'm so happy the show is back on again. I'm like, it's been going the whole time. But it really definitely made me realize the audiences are split up. And shout out to the podcast listeners because they have the best retention compared to YouTube. I mean, they lived like 95% of the show. They listen all the way to the very, very end. Like when we're doing the sign outs, and even then, many of them listen 100%. So shout out to
get a lot
everybody
of
who
comments too, like, oh, can we get it on the podcast if we ever slow down? And I'm like, Jack's on that shit. Don't worry about it. He'll get it going. Give him time. We're doing the best we can.
Yep. So I've been very consistent these last few months. Usually the same night. If it's ever later than that, it's some technical difficulties. Like sometimes it takes 5 minutes to download, and sometimes it takes an hour to download. And I don't know what changes that. So I probably need to figure that out with my internet provider. But that's some inside baseball that the listeners probably don't care too much about. But I'm just happy that I'm able to do it a little bit easier than I thought, and it doesn't take up too much time. My wife is courteous enough to allow me the post processing time to, after the show, make sure we can get it up to the podcast listeners, which
that super helps.
It's definitely worth it because like you said, some people, they just want to stick that earbud in their ear while they're working and doing something and not look at anything at all and just listen along. And the fact that we can transfer information to them through this modality is an amazing thing. So, and with that being said, when I was looking,
we can reach, the better, man. That's what I think. The more we can reach, the better. That means there's more people homegrown, and that's really my goal. I don't know everybody else, but that's my goal. I want to see more people homegrown, growing their own cannabis, because that means there's more good weed out there and less bullshit weed.
And when you travel, you get to meet up with homies who have some dank that's homegrown.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's kind of not like from a selfish standpoint, but everybody deserves good medicine at an affordable cost or recreational cannabis if that's how you choose to consume it. And I think that's it, Jack. That's the best part of like these events. I met like, you know, the core group of my friends that were there, but then also all my extended family from all the shows. And we show up and everybody's wanting to share stuff. So you go to those events, you know, you might bring some of your own stuff, but you're leaving with a bounty, way more than you brought, because everybody's wanting to share everything. Oh, just try this, just try that. They're not looking for anything in return. You know what I mean? That's the coolest thing about this community, is just how giving and how open everybody is. And man, I'm addicted to it. I love that shit. It's definitely a great thing, no doubt. And I'm happy to be able to be a little small part of it and try and strive forward to get more in-person content. One of the things that I want to do with the Cheap Home Grow Meetup is do a live podcast recording where we all get in front of a mic and we do the show live in front of the actual crowd.
That'd be dope.
Have like a mic where they can come up and actually ask questions. The other thing I was going to say was when I was looking at the uploads, one of the most popular, I think it's because people went back and listened to it over and over and over and over again, episodes, was the Back to Basics episode, where we just talked about basics of growing, you know, like what do you do in veg? What medium do you use? And I know for a lot of our audience, maybe who's here with us on the YouTube, who listens every week, it's probably a little bit overly simplified for them, but we do have a lot of newer growers that are just getting started. And I think it is good to highlight that stuff sometimes. So I don't know if we'll do that tonight or maybe in the future, another Back to Basics part 2, because that seemed like a very popular one. And yeah, it's interesting to see. I want to give the listeners what they want. And the people that show up live are about half, even sometimes less than half of the total. So we want to make sure that everybody is kind of getting a little bit of what they're looking for. But most of that's about growing indoors. And I just flipped some Velvet Bunch F3 to flower finally after torture testing the hell out of them, keeping them root bound, getting them way too hot, way too cold, over and underwatering, doing everything miserable to them, like too much light, too little light. And they survived the veg stress test. So now I'm going to repeat that in my flower, but we'll see how they go through.
Tell me, in your own opinion, I mean, because you're going to know better than anybody, but looking at your F3s and looking at your F1s, are you seeing huge differences there yet? Or are you seeing just incremental changes? Or are you seeing no difference and it's pretty much the same?
Less vigor for sure by F3 already. F2 was very similar to F1 as far as vigor. I didn't notice a significant difference in vigor. F1 versus F3, it's like night and day. Even the two that I'm not stress testing as hard, that I'm doing more for like production, they still get a little bit of stress testing, but the veg time has been much slower. And I noticed that same with I've grown Cinderella 99, just the Brothers Grimm. And then my buddy Two Scrog sent me some F4 Cindy 99 that were picked for the pineapple flavor by Dynasty Genetics, and they F3'd it looking for that pineapple. And then Two Scrogs just took the F3 pineapple from Dynasty and made it into F4. But those were some of the least vigorous. No offense to Two Scrogs, but from seed, the seedling, they were tiny little seedlings and they vegged really, really, really slow. And although Cindy 99 was like squat and like stout plant, it had some pretty decent vigor, despite being like tighter node spacing, I guess. So I would definitely agree that later in the like F3, F4, F5, you definitely see less like vegetative speed, and it's interesting, but the structure is similar.
Is the move then, once you get what you're looking for in the breeding project, maybe it's a flavor, maybe it's a high. Once you get to where you're at, maybe you're so far down that it's not very vigorous. Is that move to breed it back to one of the F1s to bring that hybrid vigor and then just pick from there? Or
that is a way to do it. I've also heard people will take like dissimilar, they'll start to breed apart where they'll have like a really squatty line and like a really stretchy line. And then they'll like take those both to F3, F4, F5 separately, and then cross those back to each other to keep it. But I do still have F2 stock. The F1 stock is very limited or completely gone. So I wouldn't be able to work back to that. I haven't kept clones. To be honest, I was mainly just doing it out of curiosity of like what's going to change from F1 to F2 to F3. My initial goal was I wanted it to be purple because I wanted a purple male to breed with, and like was going to back cross it to J1 to have J1 available from seed, because J1 super green, purple male would make it easy to distinguish any offspring. Like the more purple ones would probably be more velvet punch dominated, where the green ones would be more J1 dominated. And since J1's a clone only, I wanted to like make that available from seed. But ultimately, after Velvet Punch F1 turned purple at day 20 or 21 in flower, then I picked, I was hoping for that. It's not something I could tell before I flipped, but the phenos that I had, I was like, well, day 20, that's pretty fucking early to be turning purple. Yeah. I'm happy with that. Those are good parents. So F2s, I sent them out to everybody. Nobody should turn purple until like earliest week 6, week 7. And like they were super purple week 8, 9 as it faded. Like if you took it 10 weeks, they were like black, but they did not turn purple anywhere near as early. So I'm like, oh, well, that was a failed. If I was just going for the purple male, like that was a failed prop. But the flavor and the high, which was a big, I described, I think very well to all my testers. I sent like a 1-page note of like smells and effects to look for, and like how it impacted me and what I kind of expected to, like, if you harvest at this date or that date. And I said, if you harvest earlier, it'd be like 60-40 uplifting, 60-40 sedating. But if you harvest like at 9 weeks, it'd be like 50-50. If you push it to 10 weeks, it'd be more like 60% sedating, 40% uplifting. And that's what most people that I've talked to have kind of found. There are some phenos that are maybe more uplifting, and some people maybe took it longer and found some more sedating stuff. But they also, like, everybody was finding the grapey smells, the gassy smells. Yeah. Tao found like a watermelon-y pheno. The one thing that surprised me was the zigzaggy phenos, the sawtooth. But when I popped 16 of my own, I found a male of that. So I do know that cool, it expresses, like one in, I say like roughly 1 in 15. Maybe you'll find that, because when I sent them out to people, like Tao found one of those, and a few others found them as well in the tester crew. So it was a really fun project. I learned a lot from it, and I'm still enjoying the F3s. They're smelling amazing in late veg and early flower. So exciting to see what comes from it.
My bliss, but I'm just fucking having fun with it, man. I don't even give a fuck. I'm just playing around, and breeders can point at me and say, you need to do it like this, you need to do it like that, and I'll just continue to laugh at them and have fun. I don't care.
That's exactly how I feel. It's like, this is my little passion project, and some people are going to tell me that I'm doing it wrong, and some people are going to tell me that I'm doing it right, and others will be like, hey, you can't release this until it's this stable, or it has Hermes, so you should just delete it, get rid of it. I'm like, well, 3 of the 27 testers who've grown them so far had Hermes, but 24 out of 27 didn't. And even of those 3, like they found other phenos that didn't herm that they liked and are still growing cuts of, to my knowledge. So it's interesting, the whole breeding process, because I never had anything herm in house, and I've run dozens and dozens of seeds, but until you run hundreds or thousands, I guess maybe you'll never find it. But I even expected it because the lineage, the cross,
Yeah.
it has like,
Well, I mean, that's where you need your testers come in, because they're going to find different environment. You can't, even if you're trying to, you're going to probably mimic your own environments just to different degrees rather than really have vastly different environments. Whereas you get
and
testers out, they're going to have vastly different growth styles and everything. So that's the best way to really
the nutrients,
if they are.
the
Yeah,
light
nutrients,
leaks,
that's
like
excellent.
the types
Lights
of light leaks,
themselves.
the lights. Yeah, like I don't have HPS. Sending them out to somebody that has an HPS was kind of informative to see how it grows differently or the same. And the Hermie things that I could kind of, and not to like make excuses for the plant, but each of those individuals I could kind of look to and be like, let's talk a little bit about it. And was there something that may have been stressing the plant? And in all 3 cases, I think that they could say yes. Like one, there was heavy light leaks from open tents right next to it for several days in a row, and multiple things in that room hermed. Then the other one was in a 1-gallon pot through flower. And I just think that's personally a little bit small for that setup. So, and the last person was the American one. He's with us here, so I don't want to badmouth him, but I think he would, and most people that have grown cookies would say if you don't clean up the bottoms occasionally, they'll get some Hermes on the lowers. And I think that's exactly what happened, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, it was on the lower, and it's probably could have been that my soil was a little hot because, like, so that could be one of the factors too. But the ones I did harvest and smoke were killers, so yeah, I'll say that.
That sample that I was somehow given was delicious, and I almost wished, like, damn, like whatever he's doing over there, I need to start doing over here to bring out that expression. Or you found a really killer pheno, because it was more, I thought the sweetest was grape, but you found like a watermelon kind of pheno that I wasn't even aware of. And that's the other beauty of sending it to testers, is other environments will bring out some expressions that you didn't even know were available. So that was a really cool experience. So I think it was 100% worth all the time, effort, and actual money, because I paid to send the seeds to every single person. I paid to grow the seeds. I have a very, very, very small grow, like it's a 5 square foot tent. So to sacrifice multiple grows for seed runs is like a bunch of flower that I'm not getting to consume. So it was a huge hit, but in the long term, I learned so much from it. It was 100% worth it. So, and I just still sent out some bunch of F2s to somebody who's like, hey, I've never had anything grapey. Like, I'm like, are you in America?
Yeah.
Ask and you shall receive. They're pretty tested at this point. Like I even changed the tester paper to, if you have light leaks, look out for herms. If you have too small of a pot, look out for herms. And if you over fertilize, like, because that was another thing, the person who had light leaks, they're a grower who's got a lot of experience, but they don't use an EC meter. They just feed once a day or whatever, and they've had good luck with that, and that works for them. So I can't say that the EC was too high, but I can estimate that when you do that style of growing, in my own experience, it's easy for the EC to get too high. And so that with light leaks, I think, is very likely to cause Hermes. So
Agree with you.
I don't want to make this all the Velvet Punch show.
1 second though, 1 second, because speaking of breeding and Tao, I saw a post today on Instagram that Amy's Aces made it across the pond over to Europe in a good amount. So that is fucking exciting, dude. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, the grow form 420, the 420 grow form. Anyway, them guys are all right, and they sent me a bunch of different seeds. So I was like, I'm gonna return the favor, and I'm excited to see everybody grow that stuff out. And I also sent them some testers. I had a blueberry male from AK Bean Breeding's Vintage Blueberry that I hit a bunch of girls with, and one of them was the time wreck. So someone was asking about that, so I sent them a whole bunch of those, which I'm excited to see what comes of those, because I haven't grown that one out yet, and there's a couple other ones I haven't grown out that I'm going to get to shortly though.
One of the things I love about you sending specifically Amy Aces or any of the Cheesequake crosses to across the pond is a lot of those guys not only have grown the UK cheese, but like that was all they would smoke for a long time, and it was around, and it was just like that was the cut. So if anybody knows what UK cheese is, it's the fucking guys in the UK, and they've grown it and smoked it and are familiar with it. And Amy Aces to me rings pretty true to UK cheese, but like I'm not an authority. I've lived in Ohio and California. Like UK cheese has never been super big here. We get occasional cheese coming through or whatever crosses of it. But for them to be like, oh yeah, Amy's got some spot on phenos of fucking cheese in there, and like they've grown the shit or they're growing it side by side with it in some cases, it's like really cool to have that validation. And now it's going to be even more of their grow rooms over there because I saw that package with a bunch of little packages in it, and I know how they work over there. Once they get those seeds, they go out and they go out to growers, just like Dr. MJ and his forum. They're not going out to people that are sitting on them. They're going out to people that are popping them and growing them for like the, spring autoflower challenge coming up. The stipulation is if you win, you got to pop one of those, I think 4 sets of seeds that you can win on there. Doc, maybe I'll throw it over to you to remind us. I think one of them's they're like Gorilla Glue Auto and like other things similar to like that, if I'm remembering correctly. But maybe you could give us a little plug for that coming up because everybody loves free seeds, right?
Absolutely. That's tomorrow. We're doing the drawing for that. And the only thing you have to do is be registered for the SFAC. Everybody that's registered gets a number in the drawing, and then the drawing's tomorrow night. So go get registered for the SFAC on cocoforcannabis.com/challenge. That's free. They're always free. It's just a grow along, and we're all going to drop seeds on April 20th on 420. Usually autos, although we do have a photo group in the spring autoflower challenge for people that are committed to growing photos. So it's a great time to try autos if you don't usually, or even if you do.
That's inclusivity right there, Doc. I got to say, it's the spring autoflower challenge, and you're still letting photo growers in on Cocoa for Cannabis. Everybody's welcome.
Yeah, they have their own group there. So the theme this year is the spring picnic, and we've got like the desserts, and we've got like the fruit group, and we got the snacks, and we got the beverage group for different strains that you might be growing to sort of lump yourself in there. We have the ants who are sort of invading the picnic as the misfits if you don't fit into something else, and then we have the photographers who are growing photo period plants. So yeah, we have a steering committee and challenge committees that have fun kind of, and Jordan, the website manager, has a lot of fun putting together the themes and coming up with like the grow box designs and stuff like that. So they've all been working on that. It's going to be a lot of fun. And yeah, we're going to do a bunch of giveaways at the start, but this is the first one, the seed giveaway. Homegrown cannabis company sponsored 10 winners. They're each going to get 2 4-packs of autoflower seeds, and there's 4 options that you'll get to choose from. Like you mentioned, the Gorilla Glue Auto, and you got the Bruce Banner Auto, the Critical Purple Auto, and the Lemon Haze Auto. I'd go with the Lemon Haze myself, but it'll be interesting to see what people choose.
So are those longer flowering too as autos? Like, do they go a little bit longer as an auto too, or no?
I haven't checked them all. I assumed that they were sort of 10 to 12 weekers, but I'm not sure. I'll have to look into that.
I was just curious if it had anything. I don't know if it makes a difference or not, because photo period to rurales, if that still kind of transfers over, as it still takes a while. My dog, sorry, snoring.
I'm like, who's snoring?
I thought he was growling. I thought he was like upset.
That's my little pug. He sounds like a pig, like a giant pig, but he's like tiny.
That's funny.
Yeah,
everybody grows different periods. We've thought about different things about like the period length of the autos. One of the fun things that we enjoy though is just everybody drops on the same day. So if you're growing a faster flowering strain, you can compare like on a day-by-day basis with other growers that are growing different strains and sort of see where it's faster, where it's slower, things like that. And see if they cool. Yeah, see how close they come to, what you would expect from that. The other thing that I've enjoyed watching through the years is how, different styles of growing, different lighting and things like that affect speed, especially in the autoflower challenge, because, most of the growers do drop on 420 and theoretically are all sort of, at the same place. So seeing how different grow styles sort of stack up. And if, throw your grow style up against the group and see how you do. So see how fast your seedlings get up going, see how, different people train their autos and stuff. It's pretty cool to see what people can do with
Yeah, as you're talking about this in my head, I just had this idea. You should reach out to I don't want to say his name. I can't think of his real name. Gnome Automatics. You should reach out to Gnome Automatics, and I bet you he has some breeding project going on. And what better way to have basically testers that are going to grow the things if he could supply you with the same strain that you could pass out, and everybody grow the same strain. That way, everybody's got the same cultivar, and then, like you said, and all these different techniques you can see right there. Well, that's an amazing amount of knowledge that a breeder is not going to get from normal testing.
Yeah, we've gotten close to doing some like seed testing deals. We did something like that with Kyle a few years ago in the New Year's Grow Challenge. But I agree, we get hundreds of growers all growing together at the same time. So if you were interested and confident in your genetics, because that's something that scared off some other people too, like, oh well, if this goes poorly in a testing sense, it's going to go poorly in sort of a spectacular way too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's gonna spread around pretty quick.
Yeah.
Maybe one of his tried and true ones, like the Alf or Anvil. Yeah, something that's like everybody's gonna get something beautiful and purple and good smoke.
Right.
Spartan, I think you reviewed that a while ago. The Anvil, I think Abolished maybe grew it or something, but you've at least gotten to try
Abolished,
it.
we reviewed it, and Sequence grew it in the greenhouse.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he did the interplanting, which I think a lot more people should start doing with any outdoor grow, if you're able to. You just fill in the space between the photo periods with autoflowers, and you get yourself a little bumper crop before the photos are even close to ready. You're pulling down some good weight and some pretty good looking buds.
Like
so
that.
it's a great use of space, and they take pretty. I mean, I think you just use soil and water, so it's like you can
Honestly,
make it simple.
People undervalue the benefit of having a bumper crop, or which is, I'm just trying to say in layman's terms, an early crop before anybody else really does, and it gets you a little bit of money back before your big harvest. So when shit hits the fan or you need something, you got cash to pay for it. And
before Croptober too, you're not going into a market that's flooded. You're going into a market that's a lot of people are selling their last year's crop at
you
the
can
time
be the
you're pulling down
wake
your auto.
before the tsunami wave.
Which,
it's a nice, I mean, I don't know how long that's going to be the case before everybody does it, and then it's no longer an advantage. But for right now, it's kind of an unsung advantage of autoflowers right there. As you get those early harvests in when it's kind of a drought where last year's outdoors all kind of gone, the deals are gone, and hey, you're just sitting on a harvest before anybody's fucking even thinking about a harvest.
You guys still see the drought thing happening? Because a lot of people are claiming that the droughts are over, and we're not going to see.
This year's the first year that we didn't really see a low like when we usually do. Right about this time, it usually starts getting kind of low, and we're still creeping downward here in our market. So no, this is the first year I haven't really seen a big drought.
I think that's going to be the case pretty regularly moving forward, because there's so many legal producers, whether it's the in the legal market that it's being shipped out or into, but it's also supplying other markets undoubtedly, whether it's legal or not. People buy it for themselves and then they sell it to their buddies or whatever. So it's making availability a lot. Access, I think is a better way of putting it, is higher now, which I think I always look at this from like the home grower, like medical producer perspective. It's a win. It's definitely a win when prices come down. I know like the producers don't necessarily want to hear that, but it is a win. And there will be luxury markets developed. Like there are super cheap and inexpensive cars out there or whatever, and there's really fancy ones, and there's different markets for everybody.
Well, I want to shout out, this is an excellent example of how a small time person can exist in a race to the bottom situation. And I want to shout them out. I'm wearing their shirt right now. It's Winewood Organics from Ann Arbor, Michigan. Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Like that shirt. That's definitely appropriate.
They're one of 3 that I know of license holders in the state of Michigan that holds a micro business license. And what that means is that you're vertically integrated. So all parts of the operation are under your control, all on one property, which is important because that means that you can offer something that even the big guys can't offer. And what that is you can say to your consumer, my weed never leaves this property until you come up and pick it up. The only weed that leaves this property is the weed that gets sent out for testing. So it's not sitting in an uncontrolled truck, trailer, back room. The packaging is controlled by me. I know what conditions it's being packaged in. And it's the closest thing to a home grow at a commercial scale that you're going to be able to get as a consumer. And we actually had this guy on our show, on the Michigan Grow Show, I think 2 weeks ago, and had excellent talk with the guy. And I was really impressed with him. And then I went to his booth at the Hash Bass on Monroe Street. And I bought a shirt instantly, and because I wanted to support that. That's something I can get behind. So that's how you can compete, because the big guys can't do that. They just can't. It's just not in the operation. They have.
I mean, they
send their
technically
shit.
they can, but it's a lot more difficult. You know, they can't keep it on property. They can't make those claims, but they could
Right.
climate control it from start to finish. It's a lot easier for that micro producer to have that quality control start to finish, where they're keeping it in a cool climate, because most people aren't going to pay for the air conditioned truck. Like, I hate to say it, like a true
Right.
air conditioned truck, not like one that has it for the
Reefer.
driver blowing on them, like an air conditioned unit on the top of the truck, climate controlling it below 68 degrees the entire time. And if there's hash in there, even colder. So it is a very important thing for micro
Well,
producers
and
to be
then
able
he
to have
does
that.
in our show, he was telling that he can do things, he can pivot quickly. For example, on the front end of the store, he kind of is the jack of all trades. So sometimes he fills in the front, sometimes he's in the packaging, sometimes. So anyhow, people kept coming in asking for bubble hash, because that's not a product you see in Michigan. Nobody has just bubble hash or dry sift. So he started just giving bubble hash. Why not? And now everybody's coming to him for it, because he's filling that gap that nobody else can do, and he can pivot really quickly. I mean, how hard is it to set up some bubble bags and start doing that instead?
It's the
in his
returns.
processing facility.
That's why the big corpos don't like bubble hash, because it returns
Yeah.
1% on your fucking whatever, 1 to 6% we'll call it. And if you're throwing 1,000 grams in and you're only pulling out 10 grams,
Absolutely.
they get
absolutely.
pissed, dude. And it's not but that's the thing. If you want to survive in this market, solventless is super hot. If you can wash hash and press decent rosin, like look at Dankman Dan. I don't know if he has a micro business license, but he should friggin' get one at this point. Like the stuff he's producing over there. But I think that's the way people are going to and are surviving right now is single source, making ice water hash, making dry sift, and differentiating from the market, which is mostly BHO. At least out here in California, it's a lot easier for them to produce at scale, and they're getting a lot more return out of it. So they don't feel as bad when they put 1,000 grams in and get a lot more than that.
I 100%
grams
agree
out.
with you, but I do not turn my nose up to. There's good BHO. Shout out to for Growly, man.
Half my dab tray right now is BHO. I'm not a
I feel like when I
snob,
dab,
but I'm
it's
just saying.
cleaner. I'm saying this, if dab's cleaner, it just feels cleaner. I don't get that.
It melts cleaner off of your nail compared to a lot of
100%.
hash.
Yep.
Because most hash, I hate to say it, is not the cleanliness that people call everything 6-star. Not everything is 6-star. If you dab it and leave something on your nail, it's not 6-star hash. So like, if you shout out to Frenchy Cannoli, came on the show, big fan of his. Me and Shane talked way back in the day about his scoring scale, but like one of the largest parts of his scale was the melt test. Because if it's not melting well, that's an indication that there's, inconsistencies either in the drying process. There's just straight up contaminant material, and that makes it not burn as clean as something that is processed super well. Like for Growly making BHO, he purges it down with limonene in his vats. The limonene, he said, once he started doing that, the levels of ppms were like so low, it was almost non-detectable in many of the tests they were getting back. So, and the part per
that's
million,
why I can see his stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I'll smoke that all day. And then when you smoke it, you can fucking tell. It's like there's nothing left. It's just you blow out flavorful air, and that's it. And
well, I think that they're artists, because I'll say 9 out of 10 people who's growing flower in the market here for flower, if you go and get it as a home grower, you're like, this is fucking garbage. But if you go and get concentrate, 9 out of 10
I
times,
agree with you.
it is amazing. You're like, wow, this guy's a fucking artist. This tastes like pineapples or
Yes.
grapefruits or melons or lemons. And it smokes well, and it has great flavor, and it's honestly, they're fair prices. That's the thing about hash is I've seen bubble hash rosin go for over $100 a gram here in California. 710 lamps per C
Insane.
rosin.
There's
Like
always
you'll
gonna be a
go
market
broke
for some
quick.
crazy
That's
expense. Yeah.
it's like it's more expensive than cocaine, and cocaine is, there's a joke somebody used to say, it's like God's way of telling you have too much money. Like fucking you could go broke real quick with expensive drugs like that. And I think that's sort of the opposite of what a lot of the community is trying to do with like the cheap home grow. We're trying to save as much money as possible and not blow it all on $100+ grams of hash rosin. But if you're getting into a market as a business, and the big guy can't produce that and people do want it, I guess some people will treat themselves. Maybe they'll only get that 1 gram a year or something, or once a month they'll get a really nice gram. But the rest of the time they're smoking the pre-ground flour or something, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of being a home grower too, is you get used to having abundance, at least in short bursts, at at the very least. And in those abundance times, you just don't give a fuck and you just smoke yourself out. And then you learn lessons real quick and perpetual harvesting or something, because you'll run yourself out of weed in a hurry. At least I can. Especially when you
So I
do,
want to
especially
share
when you start
something.
fucking with concentrates, especially if you do anything concentrates, that weed goes fast.
So I have something to share. I don't think they follow us necessarily, but on Instagram, their name is Intentional Misuse, or Lignum vitae, which is, of course, life wood, or wood of life, or tree of life, however you want to describe that. They sent me some seeds. So I thought I would go over that a little bit if you're down. Yeah.
Yeah,
One
are
of
they
them's,
cannabis seeds?
yes, they are.
You never know,
Always
though.
good. No, not especially with me. I think sometimes I'm the rogue agent in this group, where I might hit you with a non-can of plants.
Well, we talked a lot about
content.
growing our own food last week, and
True.
Or
You know,
banker plants like
yeah.
explosive ember peppers.
Black diamond watermelon, by the way. I'm a big fan of that cultivar. If you can get that, if you like
Nice.
watermelon. But Kerala F2 was one of them.
Oh.
The other one was this says upgrade with 2 D's in ditto marks. It says incense haze and chem DD F2
Ooh,
of
chem double D.
Chimera. Primary colors: green rose, Congo black 9 in Roman numerals F3, and
Interesting.
LA Hindu crossed with OMG. Bridal veil in quotation marks,
That
which
one
is
sounds
mother's.
scary. I wouldn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Wow. Mother's glue crossed with Yosemite glue. And another thing of primary colors. And I'm told here that primary colors is older lines mashed up. Original haze crossed with haze 19 crossed with 1979 Xmas bud.
Ooh.
Bridal veil is mother's glue crossed with Yosemite glue. Yosemite equals GG4 and ancient OG. Mother's glue is Yosemite glue crossed with LA Hindu crossed with old mother Ghani. Green rose is the original haze crossed with haze 19 crossed with LA Hindu crossed with these are just X marks, so I don't really understand necessarily if you guys want to do the math. So this is crossed with old mother Ghani crossed with 1979 Xmas bud, and the Kerala was from Cocoa Jeans via Wonder Made Me Do It, whoever that is.
I think it's Kerala, not to be like too India specific, but somebody corrected me. It's Kerala is the way that you pronounce that little area in India. And then the Ghani, I think, is Ghani, like Afghani. But the LA Hindu is some really good stuff. So I think anything that's crossed to that would probably be early on my popping list. And a lot of that stuff will take like half a year to finish. Those Nigerian black and like Congo and like a lot of that stuff is the hazes are really, really, really long flowering, but super
but the
cool.
highs can be special, so it's worth it.
Definitely. They're like nothing you really see today, to be honest. It's unique when you get to smoke something that takes longer than 14 weeks to flower. And it looks like something that most people here would never want or pay for because it's like so airy and wispy. But when you actually get to smell it and consume it, it has some incredible effects. So I'm a big fan of those. Do you have plans in the future to get a home grow setup started, or are you still
definitely do.
busy and traveling?
I definitely do. The main issue for me is just like I've said earlier, it's probably a weak argument to a lot of people who work probably harder than I do in some regards and still are able to keep a plant going. But I'm sure you've heard of the spoons analogy with regards to people's energy levels and what they can take to task. And currently, still, that is probably not something I could give what I would consider to be sort of suitable time investment personally. but I definitely do. I often take notes when we're talking here on the Cheap Home Grow podcast, of course, and also with other people who I collaborate too. And I also have some other things in the work that I mean, it's private, sort of stuff, so I don't want to talk about it here, but I do have concept plans for growing in an outdoor setting that I'm probably more excited about than growing in an indoor setting personally. Not because it's better or anything, but it's something that I find interesting.
The sun in California, if you can grow underneath it, is an amazing grow light, for lack of a better term, I guess. It can definitely bring out some awesome expressions, and the cost. I mean, hard to want to pay for electricity when you've got such a great,
in California especially.
Yeah, I mean, I have a tiny grow setup, like only a couple 100 watts of light, and my bill is ridiculous. Like,
it's from the lights. Like, you've done the math.
Predominantly. There's
Wow.
also fans, exhaust fans and
Yeah,
stuff.
that's true.
But it's because the place that I live, I'm in like a tiny home, and a bunch of other people have these very tiny homes or trailers, whatever you want to call it. And most people in a space that's only 400 or 800 square feet don't use a ton of electricity. So if you're running a couple grow lights, like in veg, I'll leave them on for like 24 hours sometimes, even though they're not on super high. It's just more. And from 4, I think, to 9 p.m., we have a time of use where you get these spikes where it costs like way more from 4 to 9 p.m. So like if I'm ever in flower, I always make sure to have my lights come on after 9 p.m. And that's actually saves a good chunk of money. It would be even more expensive if I didn't go through the little hassles of doing this stuff.
Hey, Jack, someone actually hit up my DM, and then on the GML show, they were discussing this gas lantern lighting schedule for vegetative growth. I was wondering if you have heard of it, and if any of you ever tried it,
Seeing a
because
conversation in chat.
It's in chat
This is
too.
what I'm in
oh,
chat.
all right,
In chat. If
yeah,
Jump in, Doc.
somebody
How
a long time
coincidental,
ago.
Tao.
Well,
it doesn't work. It works to keep the plants out of photoperiodism, to keep them out of flowering, by turning the light on for an hour in the middle of the dark period. But it doesn't help grow plants. I mean, it confuses the plants, it seems to, and you're just providing a lower DLI. So this is the one time where sort of understanding DLI is important in a grow and about light, but that's the total amount of energy that you're able to give to the plants over a 24-hour period of time. And if you're only running the light for 13 hours instead of 18 hours or some longer period of time, you're definitely decreasing the amount of time that the plant is able to absorb photons and photosynthesize and grow. Add to that, it's not a natural rhythm for the plant. You don't have a standard on-off rhythm for the plant. You have this off, on, off, on, off, on sort of weird rhythm for the plant that, we've had a couple of growers try this. This is why I'm sort of willing to speak more confidently. One grower that I knew for years tried this and really gave it a go for a solid like 5-6 weeks with plants in veg, and had to give up on it because he felt so bad for the plants. So yeah, it would violate rules of physics in order for this thing to work. It does keep plants from going into flowering, but the plants are weak and small and slow.
So I'll just give a little background on the history of it, because it goes to even more of the reason why it doesn't necessarily make sense to do it as an intentional horticulture practice. In ag and horticulture, it was usually like northern areas that didn't have a ton of light, and they're just trying to keep stuff in veg or whatever. And we're talking like hoop houses with very minimal climate control. And they would literally use gas lanterns or very cheap lights strung across a hoop house. That's just enough to keep them out. And we're talking about just trying to minimize the cost of production. They're not maximizing output. Like with our cannabis grows indoor, the amount of energy use, like I was talking about earlier, my electric bill is super high. You want to veg as short as possible and get as many runs in per year as possible to maximize the grams per square foot, or maximize your yield essentially per that electrical use. Otherwise, you're just not being really efficient. And like Doc is mentioning, yeah, you're running less light, technically you're lowering your DLI, but that's going to have inverse effects. Like it's going to make your plants grow slower and grow less. So if you're trying to grow the biggest plant as fast as possible, the gas lamp does not make a whole lot of sense. If you're like the person that he came on fucking Talking Shit with Eagle, and I can't think of exactly who it was, so I don't want to name who it was, but they have been doing it for over a decade, and they're like up in NorCal doing an illegal grow that's like off grid, and they have to keep their electric bills down. They're using old HPS lights, and they're running probably too many of them. And it was kind of like a cobbled together reasoning, but they made it work for themselves. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's like he's done 600 shows. So of the 600 shows he's had people come on, let's say 500 of them are actual individual interviews of growers. I've heard one person use the gas lamp with like a semi-questionable reasoning behind it and stick with it. Everybody else is growing with regular ass veg lighting routines and having plenty of success. So the main question would be why switch? And I guess to save a little bit of money on the upfront, you save it on your electrical bill maybe that month, but instead of vegging for a month, now you're vegging for a month and a half or 2 months. So you're getting less crops in, and then you end up paying more on your electric. So it all evens out in the end. And I would just try and optimize. Not it is the cheap home grow, but like I think quality is cheaper in the long run a lot of the times, and just doing things right the first time will save you time and money. So
yeah, I think it's like you just explained it perfectly. Dr. Coco and Jack together was beautiful. It's basically, it's a technique that keeps your plants alive. It's a tool that can be used in specific situations, but it's not like a rule of thumb to do every situation and run that. It's not like efficient. It's not
Right.
You could do things way more efficiently just by running the straight light, for X amount, and then like we're doing. There's a reason why everybody's been running at least 18 hours, sometimes 24 forever, because they've tried everything.
Well, and that's a better debate. 18 versus 20, or 20 versus 24, or 16 versus 17. Those are like, I would be more interested in talking about that. But the gas lamp, I feel like Spartan was kind of just alluding to. It's almost like my power went out. Now I'm running things off of a generator.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm going to run the gas lamp for a day or two until the power comes back.
But
But
I have to ride my
tool to
exercise
use. Yeah.
bike to power the generator or something, right? So I can only do this for so long in the middle of the night. Yeah, absolutely. If there's a compelling reason that you can't provide longer period light, this is one of the tricks to hold a plant in a vegetative
And I
state.
do use this myself. I use it. I have a battery powered light. If I lose power, I know that. So I'll put it on that battery for just an hour. There's no reason to run it longer than that. You know what I mean? And I'm saving that battery so I can go turn it back on and again in a few hours.
Somebody asked about mothers, though. I really wouldn't do this with mothers, because you don't want to keep mothers anywhere close to sort of being interested in flowering. You want to keep them usually under 24-hour light. The one case where I think most people do agree on 24-hour schedules is for mother rooms. So that's probably not the best idea to be running that close to the line, sort of with mothers and getting pre-flowers developing and stuff like that.
especially older mothers.
I find re-veg too is a good time for 24 hours. Re-veg.
Yeah, no, without doubt, re-veg is a good time for 24 hours. Mothers is a good time for 24 hours, but it's not a great time for doing the gas lamp routine. It's not a good time for trying to see how much darkness you can give.
Oh my God. Could you imagine trying to re-veg something under gaslight? Yeah, it's never going to re-veg.
That would be a good challenge, but no, not for anybody that actually wants to get a harvest this year.
Like
right?
5 years later, it re-veges.
Yeah.
The mother idea is definitely, I don't think ever going to work with the gas lamp for sure. And the other thing about mothers is, if you think about everybody I've seen run a successful operation that has mothers or even taking clones, they've always told me you want the healthiest, best clones. You want the healthiest mothers possible to get started on your next run. And many of them will even kill off a lot of like the weaker clones that don't root well or fast, or they're not vigorously growing or whatever it is. So why would you want to put your mother in a situation where messing with the light cycle like that? I know for a fact you can measure it, and I don't know, I have like a paper offhand, but the hormone levels from light to darkness are vastly different.
Yeah.
And like bricks and everything is going up and down throughout the day. So having it go from light to dark and light to dark with like such quick on and offs, like it's definitely not, it hasn't evolved to do that. It doesn't do that anywhere in nature. So you're pushing the plant to do something that's you're really asking a lot of it to get a very marginal return at best. So I think we've put the nail in the coffin on the gas lamp for sure.
Brian asks one more question. He asks this: what if you bump DLI during the 13-day hours match? So the way you would do that, Brian, is by increasing PPFD. But you can't. I mean, unless you're running sort of seriously under the level of PPFD that you should be already. We're already a well-optimized grow is already sort of pushing at the limits of PPFD. So the other dimension there is how long you leave the lights on, because you can't just turn the lights up. So I just want
and Doc, you made
That's a
that
good
point to me in the
point.
past, and I didn't get it at first. I was like, well, I could just run 1500 PPFD for 11 hours or 12 hours, and then plus the 1 hour dark. But then, like, you kind of put it in a way that makes a lot of sense. It's like, well, we're already running kind of close to that maximum. So, like, let's say it's 1500 with CO2 or 1000 without CO2 for 18 hours at 1000. That's like really damn high DLI. And if you're just doing 1000 for 12 hours plus one, or even 1500, it's not going to hit that level. Or you're going to run it to a point where it's so high during that short period that you're going to be stressing the plant with just a sheer overload of trying to get to the same DLI as you would at 1000 for 18 hours in a 13-hour period. So it's
exactly. If you
it's
can
literally
increase your
physics.
PPFD, then increase your PPFD, right? That's irrespective of the DLI that you're giving or of the lighting routine that you're giving. PPFD is not limited by duration. PPFD is just limited by carbon dioxide and the plant's ability to process light in photosynthesis. So as long as you're staying within those limits, but right, exactly. We're already at pretty much those limits. We don't have a whole lot of room to just sort of increase density because we're decreasing duration. So yeah, you decrease duration, you decrease DLI.
Major General 420 says Alaska gets 24 hours of light. Yeah, that does happen. That is different than the gas lamp routine, though. I'm not arguing that 24 hours of light doesn't happen anywhere. I actually would love to see like an autoflower in a nice little hoop house during that season in Alaska, where they could kind of climate control it and just take advantage of the 24-hour
I
light.
lived in Alaska. I would have autoflowers all the time. And then when you get 24-hour light,
Lowenfels is from there. That's where Jeff Lowenfels is from, and he's pushing them hard.
He's not only is he from there. Did you guys hear the news?
I heard he's running for office.
That's correct.
Oh wow.
I wish him the best. Gardner Jeff.
Yeah.
Yep. I wish him all the best. We need more cannabis-friendly representatives.
Indeed.
And all
I couldn't agree more. And he's a well-written gardening columnist for like 30 years there. He was writing about like tomatoes and other stuff as well. And I think that getting people to grow their own food or flowers or just gardening in general is like an admirable career. He's written several books, Teaming with Microbes, Teaming with Nutrients, the whole Teaming with series, and more recently the DIY super long title or whatever, Grow Your Own Autoflower or whatever. It's like a SEO title, got a lot of words in there so people can search it up and find it and make sure they can order it up. But he's a great guy, really quirky individual, but I love his passion, man.
Oh, Jack. Wow. I don't know if I'd agree with that statement. I don't like you mischaracterizing our ally in politics here. I don't know.
Quirky in a good way.
We
I'm mischaracterizing him.
I definitely
No,
enjoyed my debate with him. I'm not sure that everybody enjoyed it as much as the two of us did, but on this channel, on the Cheap Home Grow Show, Jeff and I had a debate about growing, and a lot of these topics about growing autoflowers in Alaska, for example, came up for sure.
I don't know.
What's that? I was just gonna say that exclamation was just an excuse for me to make a very weird joke, which is to say that some people believe that if you're part of a certain community or group, interest group, that's how you shouldn't criticize other people in your interest group. And really, I was just trying to make a point that that's a terrible plan. That's a terrible idea.
Yeah, we have to be able to criticize within our own group. I agree, though, that it is funny that people get mad if anybody criticizes others within the same group a lot of the time.
I'll criticize. I think he's a little closed-minded on the leaf strip whole idea. Yeah, personally. I mean, because I even came at him with examples of other plants that once they've got slightly eaten by animals, they thrive much better from that loss after that. So
immune response.
He had no interest of learning about any of that stuff. But whatever, it's all good.
I'll say my personal anecdotal experience. I tried his method of not taking a single leaf off the plant for several grows, and I now lean more towards that end of the spectrum than stripping the shit out of my plant.
Yeah, I'm not
Especially-
saying-
Leave the leaves.
Yeah, listen to Doc.
I would have to
Doc
throw down
knows.
with Jeff on this one. Yeah.
Doc knows that, but but just to not even entertain or want to take in certain other knowledge, I don't know. Or
As
even
we get
entertain
older,
the
we get
idea.
more
interested in
fixed.
understanding the data.
I have
And be
I
willing
have-
to try to sort of communicate that, meet the person you're talking to where they are, right? Not
So
just
I have-
stare at them over the head.
I have my own white whale. If you guys like to talk about it, if you have of a subject, sure.
But before
So,
we move past this, Matthew, I just want to say team leaf strip all the fucking way. So, go ahead.
No. It's like we said earlier, it's important that we're able to make those assessments. So I'm going to do it this way here.
I'll say before, while you pull that up, if I had 1,000 plants, I would be as afraid to pull more leaves off of them than when I've just got a couple plants in my home grow. It's easier if you can, in a commercial space, pack hundreds or thousands of plants into a space and then leaf strip so that the humidity and everything is dialed in, compared to like in a home grow space. I think there's a significant difference from commercial cultivating to home cultivating. But
There's
I
so
still
many
see the values in
factors.
leaves.
It's also a
Both
huge
people could be
difference.
right. Yeah.
That's true.
It's very situational.
Actually, that in fact, what you just said, Tao, is exactly the reason why I'm bringing this up. So this is actually a really cool subject. I've talked about it before, but it's this concept called mechanostimulation or thigmopriming is sometimes what it's called. Thigmomorphogenesis here. This is a paper called Mechanical Stress Acclimation in Plants, Linking Hormones and Somatic Memory to Thigmomorphogenesis. So somatic is like, to do with your body and movement. I play too much D&D, but the point that I'm trying to make here is that there's this idea with plants, vibrations, right? Ooh, what a word. A lot of people put a lot of weight on the words like frequency and vibration. And if you ask me, I feel like sometimes it is really great. It's really great for poetry, but maybe it doesn't always mean that something is amazing or great or whatever. And this is no different. I actually think so. I'll put it to you this way. There's really interesting research that shows that wind, even sonic waves, so sonic vibrations, so like that move through the air, can actually be picked up by things like trichomes. It can be picked up by other sorts of tissues. And of course, when you move near a plant, you obviously can affect the plant. And if you like bend some tissues, or I think there's a picture here. If there's not, then I apologize. Actually, it is not here. It's in a different one. But basically, obviously, people might not know this, but when you actually bend or cut leaves or do these sorts of things, there is actually genetic expression change that happens in response to that. And depending on what plant we're talking about and under other contexts that might be affecting it, this can have a lot of really interesting sort of effects. Like you mentioned, Tao, that people can, they can cause sort of a stress response. And the thing that gets me is that sometimes people talk about this subject and specifically in regards to using it as a way to prime the immune system of plants. And I think this is actually a really underutilized and underconceptualized thing, because when people hear vibrations and health, I think they go and they think something pseudoscientific. And I understand why that is, because I've been exposed to people who I think make claims that are, not particularly practical, but they use these buzzwords. But what is interesting is that it is definitely true, though. Like here, I'll put it where we at the abstract here. Down here we say
I saw buzzing bees, and that was enough to create a response in the plants.
Yeah, absolutely. Or there's a electrostatic. Like if you ever wonder why a lot of bees, like bumblebees, honeybees, and other solitary bees have a lot of hair, even hoverflies and other insects can pick up sort of electrostatic cues.
They're kind of like the antennae, yeah.
Well, no, on their hair, not as much on their antennae. but
Right,
that does
right, but
happen too, somewhat.
the
Yeah.
little hairs are like antennas of frequency, right? Of some sort.
Well,
Not their antennas, but the actual, I don't know
well,
what you call them.
some insects, actually bees in particular, and ants, they all some of them have special glands that are magnetoreceptive,
Right.
and some have it more than others too. But yeah, that's a great point. So like there is actually something to this here. In the abstract, they say we provide insights regarding one, the regulatory mechanisms induced by single or prolonged events of mechanical stress. Two, how mechanical stress confers transcriptional memory. So that we're talking about basically like genetic expression that is elicited in response to the same triggers. To induce cross-acclimation to future stress. And three, why thigmomorphogenesis might resemble an epigenetic phenomenon. So something that you would see passed on through from parent to offspring, actually, if you're able to do it enough. And the thing is that sometimes I see this is depicted as like, oh, the frequencies are the good vibes and it's all just about that. And it's a little bit of a platitude, I think. But the thing is that you are actually inducing stress in the plant when you are doing these things. I wish there were better pictures to be able to illustrate this point. They have one down here that we could use. I could make this a little bit bigger. This is not a very great picture at all, but these are all the various things here, like rain, wind, bending, touch, bees, right? Herbivory, of course, even like the vibrations of like mandibles chomping on leaves.
Are we trying to assume that stress is a bad thing in this situation? Because I would argue that that's not always the case. Not for what we're growing the plant for.
I don't think he's saying it's a bad thing. I think he's saying it can bring out expressions within the plant, and the plant definitely realizes, like even just bending it, or even like a vibration. So like a bee buzzing next to it, it knows. Or like, for an example, like my buddy Vegan Doja sings to his plants, and a lot of people think it's silly, but like maybe there is something to it. And his plants are vigorous. Maybe it's what he selected or where he's at. But like I think that it's everything. You know, it could be a very small percentage of what makes it special,
Sure.
but it could be that
Some
little
things,
extra 1%.
like you say, Jack, some things might have no effect, and we might think that they have an effect because they have an emotional sort of resonance with ourselves. To use the term myself, you might compose music like me, and you might want to play your music for your plants, or you might, I don't know, record your heartbeat and play it for your plants. But that doesn't mean necessarily that's even going to be recognized or have the effect that you intend for it to have, even though it gives you good fifis. Does that make sense, kind of? So like here, for example, if you thigmoprime too much for certain plants, I mean, you're inducing a major stress response. Like plants don't typically get exposed to like, a device that might like either like inundate them with sonic vibrations or literally vibrate them by physically shaking the stem and the leaves. Like that's not a thing that happens.
It is though. There's a guy who makes a scrog that shakes it on Twitter. It's like
but not in nature, of course.
Yeah, I know. It's just interesting now that people have created these devices. There's another one that Twisted Roots uses. It plays like bird chirps and other like natural sounds to his plants, and it's been advertised as a product for many, many years. I've been scrolling through his YouTube trying to find the name of this product, but I cannot find it. So go ahead.
Oh, I'd be curious to hear more about these things, because I do think I guess what I'm trying to say is like there's something here. There's definitely some interesting like effects here that I think we as cultivators could make use of. But I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that like the thing that's happening, right? So they get these vibrations, and again, it's not magical. There's a mechanistic response that happens. There's receptors at a cellular level that that sort of signal other plant hormone changes and these sorts of things. You can even see here in the diagram, right? Where is it here? Yeah, histone modification, which is often referred, sort of related to epigenetics. Jasmonic acid mediated priming, so like there are hormone responses to these effects, but like that's true if you use a phytohormone. That's true if you have pests that are eating your plants. That of course will also stimulate these things to some degree. Trimming your plants will have this effect. But it's all in moderation, right? Like if you do too much or too little, if you prime a plant, you're telling the plant to take its resources and do this with them. When perhaps if it didn't have that stimulus, it would do another thing or multiple other things. And this could be really great if, for example, you know that you're going to have a certain stress occur, and that if you use this frequency, if you prime with this sort of stimulus, then I think it's actually very valid that you could prime a bunch of constitutive defenses.
You could test it in
I
a
was
sense,
gonna,
like a side by side.
the one that's Twisted was using, I'm pretty sure, is the Sonic Bloom, and that was
Yeah.
first introduced to like ag farmers in the Midwest. And I don't know if it's snake oil, but the one guy claims it definitely works, and it kind of mimics bird sounds, and I think it's supposed to like wake the plants up quicker and have them. I don't know exactly all of it, but yeah, it's weird sounds coming from speakers that you put out. They put them out in these agricultural fields, like loud. So it's interesting stuff, sure.
The other product was called Ganja Grid that I was talking about earlier, the vibration controlled scrog. And I think like I've talked about in the past, like a fan on a plant versus a plant that doesn't have any wind blowing on it. The plant that's next to the fan is going to have a thicker stalk and thicker side branches. And I've seen that side by side.
Yeah.
So I think with the Ganja Grid, I'd love to see like same cut grown in like a 4x4 with the Ganja Grid versus like a regular scrog, and see how it changes. Because like what pheno expressions would it change? Because like Matthew's paper is highlighting, this stuff is impacting things like jasmonic acid, phenotypic expression, other things that are really difficult to measure. And like you'd have to do lots and lots of tests side by side to really parse out exactly how each one of these, like just like a vibrating scrog is one independent variable that you could do a test on. The other one is that sonic bloom or other sounds. But even like I let my cats graze on my plants as part of like the stress testing, because I think of that as like something that happens in nature. Animals come up and chomp off leaves. Like, how is the plant going to respond to that? Like, what does that do? So it's interesting to include these little things when you can in your testing and experimenting.
And I won't hold you guys hostage for long with this topic. I guess my closing thoughts is that I would like the romantic idea of like frequencies and vibrations that are used in this sort of poetic context, which is totally valid. Not, and even I say good vibes all the time, so like I'm just as culpable. But I think there's something really cool here, and if we sort of pay attention to the scientific research, I think that people could really make use of it. But I think that it's possible that some of the things that has made it popular, they might not actually have the effects that we think they do, whereas others might actually be really, really, really useful, even if it's somewhat contextual. And then, of course, at the very end here, ultimately what you are doing is you're causing these hormone responses and other sort of responses to happen in the plant, which maybe you could achieve with a less expensive sort of stimulus, or maybe you can do something with the thigmopriming in particular that's very highly niche and specific. That could be really awesome that you couldn't use with like a phytohormone or some other sort of maybe nutrient supplement or other input. So I just think that's a really interesting topic, and I'm curious to hear more about this. If anyone in chat has experiences or research or ideas, I find it very fascinating.
I just wanted to chip in that I love seeing new ideas like that, and I just encourage people, whether you're especially in a home grow situation where it's not super costly, to try something out. Just try it next to your old way. Try one plant, and just find. There goes my dog again. Seriously, but just try it, because everybody's situation is different too. So it may work great in your situation, it may not work great, but try it, because then you'll know. You could say, no, I tried that and I got XYZ results, and so I went to this way. Just pick whatever works best in your situation, but try it, give it a try.
I could see a little bit of both sides. Like with the technologies and experimenting with them, and maybe they have an effect, but maybe they don't. But like one thing I mentioned, Twisted Roots, like he uses the sonic bloom, but he also implements a lot of other stuff. Like he uses the 23 gemstones in his water, and he also uses a very powerful magnet in his water. And those are three things I would like to see independently tested
Yeah.
of one of
You-
another, because maybe the
you know,
gemstone fragments have micronutrients. I don't know if they do or don't.
I'm sure none of that hurts, but I'm pretty sure he also adds like real nutrients and treats his plants well on, in a regular way as well.
Yeah, he does. He uses like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
organic
So
soil
that's
plus bloom yellow bottles, and he's doing a whole lot of other stuff. But
yeah.
to give him some credit, in
Oh, hell
Michigan, a lot
yeah.
of people struggle outdoor, and he has some monster ass California looking ass plants, and he gets some pretty big ass harvest out there. So he's doing something right. So it's like I do like to give at least some thought and credence to maybe there is something behind it. Which one of those things? And the fourth thing that I didn't even mention yet, he breeds his own shit. He's
Mhm.
specifying it to that area. Stuff that did better last year, he keeps around. He breeds it into his next thing. So when you're doing that, there are factors that on top of the gemstones and on top of the sonic bloom and on top of the magnet in the water, it's really hard to parse out what exactly is leading to the success. But it's interesting to take note of, I guess, a lot of the things that you don't necessarily see that across all successful people, but some people, maybe that's their little secret
Well, I
sauce or
just
whatever.
the only thing is that I see some people they stagnate themselves as growers because they'll learn one system that works for them, which is great, but never try anything new. So you'll have people still running HPS lights, for example. And it's like you can make your life so much easier. You could grow the same amount of weed and save, it's paid so much less on your electrical bill if you would just, and so I see stuff like this all the time. And so I don't want people to get closed-minded about things. And like, I love when people bring up new things. And even though I can't try every single thing there is out there, I've tried an awful lot of things and I go with what works for me. So like,
Yeah,
they're still
nuance
going-
is super important. Oh, sorry, I didn't want to talk
There's
over.
both sides
you.
of
I was just gonna say, and they're still going on about leaf strip and chat, and people can't even agree on what a leaf strip is. So I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah, but smart, there's the right way, which is my way, and then there's everybody
Right.
else's way. So we want to make
Of
sure
course.
yeah.
Yeah,
No,
you
but
don't.
I know Doc was about to say, yeah, you don't want to rock the boat too much, right, Doc? If you know what
But
you're
you don't
doing.
want to chase every new fad, but you also don't want to get stuck in your ways, right? You want to be
Right
open to
on.
new evidence, but you don't want to be sort of chasing every new fad and gimmick and looking for every new
Absolutely.
shortcut necessarily.
That's why I said
think-
try one plant, not your whole garden. Just try one and see.
Yeah.
Just see for yourself.
Yeah,
Am I out of
exactly.
touch? No, the kids are wrong. I'll give an example. It's very recent. Somebody asked me for evidence that, like empirical evidence, like I often do, that predatory mites work. That certain predatory mites work against hemp russet mite. And there's not any research about that, but I recommend that they work because of my experience. When I applied them and only them, they have routed russet mite populations. But I have to commend someone who's asking for empirical research. And it's actually my hope that the details about that will be more, better articulated in the next few years as people, well, for one thing, there are definitely private entities, commercial entities that have private research that probably meet some of this nuance out, but they don't want to share that for strategic reasons. But I just think that's a very valid thing to ask for always. And I'm actually very, I'm saddened that I can't give people better empirical data on that, because I pride myself on sourcing that so much. And in my experience, like especially with biocontrols, if you've ever read about the history of biocontrol use in agriculture generally, then you would know that it's rife with so many examples of people not using them appropriately, even the people who are experts in their use. And it took a lot of time and money and resources and trials to see that, like, you could even use some in many cases, but not all. Some cases they won't work out very well. Other cases they work really quite a bit better in. So context, nuance, obviously goes without saying sometimes, but this is very important, right?
They're also an
So what
expensive
you're
option,
saying,
and it doesn't get
Yes.
tested super often. And like hemp is understudied. It has been around for a long time. It's more studied than cannabis in some regards as far as cultivation in recent history. But hemp russet mite is not one that there's a ton of efficacy to. Maybe there is on other sprays that I'm not familiar with, but
Sprays,
So,
there's some research for sure.
but
so
the
Sentinel,
predator mite thing, I just think they need to do more research, and
Sorry.
it's just going to be a little while until that gets done. Sorry, John, go ahead.
sorry. No, I'm sorry for stepping on everybody, but so basically what you're saying is just because there isn't empirical evidence and a white paper stating that something is true, it could still be true. Crystals is all I'm saying, right?
Well, I would say even if there's research to show that something does work, that it doesn't
It's
even
not
necessarily mean that it
necessarily,
works
that's
in all cases.
right on 100%.
Sometimes
And-
it can be an
and,
indication that it's actually not accurate because
do
who's
have
conducting the
some-
research?
Yeah,
That's
I say
true.
I have empirical
The
evidence.
source, yeah.
I've got some crystals in my potted spider plant, and it has produced so many babies. So the Matthew, help me with this. My favorite word that you use with mites, fecundity. What is it?
Fecundity.
Fecundity.
The fecundity that it fucking imparts onto my spider plant is amazing. So I will give you that empirical evidence for that. So I'll give you that.
There you
What
go.
crystal? We
It's
gotta have
a-
details, man. Was it amethyst?
It's a white. It's like an opaque white crystal. I don't know.
Hmm.
It's just
That sounds like the right one.
My crystal
Yeah, you're
finally
probably right.
lost the test. It was like 6 grows in a row. I had a lithium quartz from I can't even think of their name. They changed their name on Instagram, but
Yeah,
I got
that's
gifted a
fine.
lithium quartz and I put it in. I had like 3 plants every single grow or 2 plants every grow. And like every time the one that had the crystal was the better plant. And I'd like try to, switch around like the positioning, like it'd be on the right side of the room and then be on the left side of the room and then be in the center of the room or whatever. And I was thinking, maybe I'm just being biased and like giving that one more attention or whatever. And like, I treated them all kind of exactly as I was trying to get the best out of every single plant. And like, this was the first grow I finally had where the crystal plant did not outperform. So yeah, the streak is broken. My
I think
lithium
we have to
quartz
have
needs to be
somebody else.
recharged.
Jack,
No,
I think we have
besides-
to have somebody else bury the crystal like in the pot before you put the plant in it, so you don't know which pot it's in, and then you won't be
Oh,
able to play
that's an
favorites with
excellent-
it.
Oh,
Here's the problem with that.
And then you won't know
Here's the
until
problem.
after you've harvested and excavated. You'll be looking for the crystal.
Oh,
know what
I
You need a
love
double
that.
You can
blind,
do that.
yeah.
And people have done that. You can find the roots grow around it. And when they excavate the roots, the crystal is like
Yeah.
wrapped up.
I hope
But,
they
But
go
then,
around
was it the best plant? I mean, then you've taken out the gardener bias factor.
Exactly, because I
You
was
have to-
thinking that
you
the whole
have to
time he was
consult the
talking. I
witches,
was
though.
like, that fucking crystal is channeling your energy, and you know where it's at. So it's kind of cheating. It might just be your energy. That's
Right.
fucking-
You
It may
gotta
have been
somebody
that,
else
but
put it in
I
the
listened to my hippie witches. Shout out to the hippie witches, and they used to have their show, but they don't do it anymore. Amber Lulana, who is with Twisted Roots, they live together now, and she told me and many other people on their weekly show that talked about like witches and crystals and things like that. That if you use a crystal in the type that I had, it was like a cylinder with like a point to plant it into the soil so that it was up and down like a pyramid or what's like an obelisk,
Obelisk.
like yeah. And that way the energy would be able to shoot down to the roots and then up through the plant.
That's
So I
the
always
point
did
of
that.
Those obelisks,
it always
they're supposed
worked.
to do the same thing, channel power into the ground.
So I don't know. I think that you could also bury them, but I then went to the next step of I bought lithium quartz for every pot. And the one quartz that she sent me was somehow better than the other ones because even when all of them got it, that one was like the winner every time. And now I'm thinking I just need to maybe recharge it under a full moon or something because I've heard that also is a way
Well,
to
she's
get the
probably
power
in
of the
charge,
crystals.
imparted some of her spirit into herself, and it's gonna be hard to replace that.
You're not a witch,
I'm not.
Jack, so yeah.
Lady
so
Greenstock, though, on the other hand,
Yeah, there you go. Have Lady Greenstock work it.
she has
Love
it in her family. Like her grandpa was a businessman and he carried around a little black cat in his suitcase for good luck, which everybody else thinks is like bad luck. And I guess it's like a Wiccan thing. I don't know too much about this stuff and I'm way out of my element here, but it's fun to wax poetic about.
The Wiccan
I'm-
believe that just generally speaking, the Wiccan believe that like their what do you want to call it? Their God or their source of power. It's in everything that's living, which I think is a fucking wonderful concept, honestly.
Like the earth. It's all about like
yeah.
natural
So,
energy,
yeah.
and the planet.
I think that's a fucking great concept, honestly. I'm interested in just different world religions, all religions, and I studied it for a while. And when I fell upon Wiccan, I really loved some of this. I'm not gonna say everything, but I really loved some of their concepts. Was really fucking cool.
when I think, when people make certain statements about like, how do I put this, different populations of humans having different tendencies towards certain religious groups through history and that sort of a thing. I know that's super big, but I guess what I'm trying to say is like Wiccans and sort of similar other um, ideologies that, like the Druids from Britain, for example, and even the ancient Romans to a degree, just having this sort of like idea that like there's sort of this animism, right? I think that's actually very touching, and also I wonder a lot if that ideology had become more widespread, would we have some like, how could that have very radically changed human development across the earth, and maybe we wouldn't have deforested so much, and other sorts of things like that. So I definitely am a big supporter of that perspective, and I think that some people have an idea that only certain groups of people had this sort of belief system, but no, I would say that a lot of groups went through an animistic, and still do, sort of a perspective. But I think that's treading a little too much on Dr. Coco's purview. But I find that very interesting.
I'll say that crystals, as much as we like to joke about them, they're used in like high technologies. Every cell phone has a liquid crystal. There's quartz in some, but like liquid crystal technology is used to make your antenna functional. So one of the things that they recycle your cell phones is to get the crystal out and reuse it. So it's definitely part of like science and technology. It has properties like the way the energy flows through a crystal, like actual energy, like electricity, flows through it, and waves like radio waves and signals. There are certain properties of certain crystals that act a certain way. So I think like, and a lot of people have experimented with like running copper to their plants to like ground them, or even just like more copper in the soil and things like that. Like I think there's a lot we'll maybe find out in the future, but not to say that there needs to be a white paper. I'd like to see a white paper that would like specifically kind of look at how do crystals, if they have an impact on plants, what is that impact? How do they impact them? Like, is it impacting the EC? Is it impacting the ability to take up water in some way? Is it just the electrical charge? Like I know people talk about like redox potential of plants, and so it's definitely interesting, like the pH versus EH.
Sorry, Jack, we don't have money for that. We got to spend money on the spending habits of middle-aged women instead, because we need to know that instead.
Oh, they just got to push it recreational so then they can start making tax money, and then
Yeah, you're absolutely
spending
right.
that so well. But not to get too political, but yeah,
man. Every time I see millions of dollars spent on some studies, I'm like, really, like what motivates a rat to do this? I'm like, really, we're spending money on that now. I'm
well,
sorry,
the problem,
there are people that love that kind of science, but I mean,
and
we
I
got some
worked in the
Spending a
animal
lot
lab.
less. Let
We
me
got
just
some
speak up
issues in this
for,
world.
hold on, can I chime in here? We're spending a
Speak
hell
up
of a
for
lot less
science.
money than we used to spend on primary research and primary science to sort of
Agreed.
advance humans' understanding of the world around us. So I support scientific research and study in all the disciplines across everything. I'm not going to sort of complain that one discipline or subject is getting more or less study. I think that we need to devote, that's one of the great things about human civilization, is that we've been able to advance the knowledge, and we never really know what practical applications a lot of scientific studies are going to come up with, or how it might be economized. I got my PhD in a field that a lot of people challenge whether or not there's a lot of money to be made, or what you're going to go on to do with that later on.
That's true.
We understand more about what makes us human. We understand more about sort of all of the different relationships around that. So I support those sociological and anthropological studies. I just wanted
I've been able to connect with my my cultural history through exactly that kind of research, and I mean, I think that that's really, and I'll make this other point too, is that I also try to be very like dispassionate. Not to say that I don't appreciate this kind of stuff, but I know there's research, and sometimes even research is not totally accurate, or we don't know. And I'm trying not to extrapolate too much, right? Because I think that's very healthy, especially for this sort of subject. But I think it's incredibly important. And I also will slightly disagree with Dr. Coco and say that I am going to complain. I don't like that in this very small niche. I don't like that there's less emphasis on taxonomists, people who look into, It's all molecular biology now. Yeah,
I hear you, but its overall funding levels have collapsed, Matthew, and that's created
yes, that's true.
Universities and research institutions to make really tough decisions to follow where the money is, to follow the paths where they can get corporate grants and stuff like that. That's part of the problem. I mean,
when did that happen?
Allocation exists because of the reduction in overall volume.
When did that switch start to occur? Because, like, to my knowledge, like, it's been publish or perish for my lifetime, which isn't very long, but science as of late has been a lot financially motivated and not always and I want it to be better. I love science. I'm pro science. I'm pro research, but I work in and around like animal labs, and then after graduating find, like, for one example, cancer research, lab mice, like Spartan was talking about. Do we need to keep spending millions of dollars on research for lab mice? Well, one criticism of lab mice is that they have either really long or really short telomeres. I can't remember which one, but if you Google it, look into it, telomeres are like, they have to do with your DNA, the length of the strands, things like that. As you get older, it creates issues with longevity, like cancer. So a lot of the research that was done on cancer studies that were claims found in mice, they get cancer way quicker. So like their lifetimes are super short, super quick cycles. They get cancer really young. And we were extrapolating information from lab mice onto humans because we're both mammals, and lab mice have a lot of similarities neurochemically. I studied psychology. A lot of their neurotransmitters correspond with human neurotransmitters. So you can say, like, okay, dopamine is up, then they're going to be happier, or serotonin's up, they're going to be more stimulated. All these things correspond. You could give a mouse caffeine and watch its energy levels rise, and then give it limonene or linalool and watch it calm down. So there's a lot of things that actually make sense to do, but like cancer research is one in particular that I'm very critical of, because one, I think cannabis is understudied for that particular purpose. And I think that is very strongly evidenced. If you look at cureyourowncancer.org, there are thousands of people now that have posted their before and after scans and using cannabis.
I have fucking evidence right here within reach, and fucking,
I have dozens of anecdotal stories, but like when you get into the thousands, you go to cureyourowncancer.org, they have scan. When I got diagnosed, stage 4 cancer, I was told I have 3 months to live. And then here's their 50%. I started taking
what I'm saying. I have that for my uncle. I've got that shit. It's not anecdotal. I mean, I've got the fucking paperwork.
Anecdotal technically means it's like from our own personal experience, right? So
I see. But yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah. But I'm just saying, I've got that.
It wasn't a study. It wasn't like a large long-term study. But when you get thousands of those anecdotal stories, to me, it becomes less anecdotal when you can go and look up lung cancer on cureyourowncancer.org and then find 150 people who have scans before and after. Here's when I took RSO. Here's how much I took. And then to see that we're funneling millions of dollars into lab research for mice, and then to have some researchers saying, hey, maybe we should stop this for cancer because their telomeres are way shorter or way longer. And that makes the cancer research not particularly accurate. So keep doing the psychological
things
research.
That you're studying, sometimes the things that you're looking at have nothing to do with telomeres, though, but still have to do with cancer.
Right. Well, it's just as one example, and maybe I'm not well versed enough in this to be even talking about it, and that's probably the case. But it's
one thing.
My main argument is that a lot of
like, money. Yeah.
Humans aren't rats. But my main issue was that tax dollars, just generally, like Dr. Coker is saying, aren't enough going to research at all, any research. So enough, like if we pay taxes, a bunch of that's going to a lot of programs, and we could break down and criticize whatever, wherever that's going, but not a lot of it's research generally at all. And of that small amount, even smaller amount is cannabis. And even smaller amount of that is like benefits of cannabis. It's like how addicting is cannabis? How much secondhand bong smoke causes cancer? Like that's what they're researching. They're not looking into.
Frustrating because when you try to legitimize it and you go to a professional like a doctor, or you go to a politician and you try to advocate for cannabis, and they say, well, there's no evidence, and you're like, you just want to scream at the top of your lungs at that point, because it's like, man, it's like a big round circle that you go, and it's just like, oh.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention Granny Stormcrow, where they've got the largest pool, in my opinion, of cannabis research. Like you could go to Google Scholar and type in cannabis medicine, but if you go to Granny Stormcrow, they'll tell you here's irritable bowel syndrome and 50 studies from 2010 to 2022 that show you lab research done with sometimes double-blind placebo, like real high level, some of the best documented. If you want like real good research, go to Granny Stormcrow's list. Just Google Granny Stormcrow and it'll pop up, and look up symptoms, and you can go A to Z. Any symptom you have, click I, go to insomnia, you'll find insomnia and a whole list of CBN studies, THC studies, pain, whatever it is, like you can find it. So it's out there.
Ethan Russo recently did a brilliant presentation on the Cornell YouTube channel, which you should all check out, that goes over cannabinoid pharmacology. And one of the cool takeaways I had heard earlier before, actually, to give more of a cannabis to keep going forward, was that CBD is not sedating but stimulating unless in like massively high doses. And again, this kind of comes back to, I think, a lot of the theme of what I was bringing up with the morphogenesis, which is the idea that like there's a stereotypical depiction and we associate this effect with a certain compound. But because we didn't do double blind, because we're not using controls and we're not isolating these things, and people criticize that isolations aren't what happened in nature. Yeah, okay. But like you're trying to find out what the compound specifically does. And of course, people make this point that like then when you bring it back into the larger group, you can kind of make better inferences as you continue that research. So, but it's important to know what the isolated effects can be. And yeah, a lot of people say that CBD helps mellow you out, but actually cannabidiol is stimulating, according to him. And the research that he cites that he has talked about is very interesting in that way. And the real insult to injury with regards to the research that you said and the many millions of dollars we spend, even though it is collapsing, like Dr. Coco was saying, is that a lot of that is to do with labor, right? Because labor is typically like the biggest, or one of the biggest, although in this case, perhaps equipment is a close second, for the expenses for research. And like, I don't know, I think that's hugely ironic and insulting, because it's like you don't want to pay the actual specialists to even investigate in the first place, So I just think that's kind of unfortunate, but I'm biased. A lot of my friends are scientists.
Yeah.
And I want to make it an important distinction about, we briefly covered the RSO and cancer, and I'm not making a statement that, RSO, although I do believe that RSO can help defeat cancer. I think that the best combination that we have available to us right now is conventional medicine plus RSO, because I think the real power on RSO with cancer specifically, with my experience with it, is like the devastation that the conventional medicine does to your body. The RSO kind of helps you heal from that, and it helps your body move on from that. So, and I'm sure it's still helping with the cancer and everything else, but I think it really shines with helping get rest, helping to get a settled stomach and get an appetite, and help your body really do the healing. And that's the big power of it, and bring down inflammation. All those things, I think, is what really is the power of RSO when it comes to fighting cancer. But that's coupled with conventional medicine. I'm not suggesting to say, fuck conventional medicine. I'm not saying that at all.
I think that's a really valid and nuanced point. In fact, I think there's a specific name for the kind of application that you're describing for the RSO, but this escapes me at the moment.
I just want to jump in.
Go ahead.
Well, the funny thing is I was kind of shitting on lab studies in cancer. Reflecting on it, RSO, Rick found a lab study on lab mice about how THC destroys or causes apoptosis in cancer cells in mice.
Russo too.
So that was what inspired him to make RSO for the first time, to treat his own skin cancer. And years later, he's helped thousands with it. And the name RSO, Rick Simpson oil, is kind of famous because of that whole incident. So yeah, it is ironic, I guess, that I was criticizing it so heavily when it has been a big part of my personal medicine use, and also belief that the cannabis medicine is so strong. One of the things I wanted to mention on top of what you're talking about, Spartan, was I think that the RSO helping the sleep and a lot of the healing being done in sleep. And I'm probably going to get a lot of shit for this, but not to disagree with what you said, but I'm not a big fan of chemotherapy. I don't think chemotherapy works I think if somebody can send me a study that says chemotherapy works at a high percent with cancer, please do, because every bit of research I've looked into says that it's very, like, we're talking like 6% on the high end and maybe 1% on the low end, and it destroys people's bodies. The reason that cannabis was made medical in the state of California in 1996 was to help people with AIDS and cancer, because chemotherapy, they were losing their hair, they were losing their appetite, they could not sleep, they were in pain. It helps with insomnia, it helped them sleep, it helped with the pain, it helped with the appetite.
Well, anecdotally speaking, my mother survived cancer of the lungs through chemotherapy.
Well, and
yeah, I know people that have survived cancer through chemotherapy too, Jack. So there are the numbers to back that up. And I'm sure we can find you some studies to look at.
And I'm just saying they might be part of the 1 to 6% in the research that I've done. And chemotherapy, one of my other,
the specific cancer, certainly, and there's some cancers with very low survival rates. There's others that are better treated with radiation than chemotherapy, but with a lot of cancers, the combination of radiation and chemotherapy, usually they can be pretty successful. So you know, I just don't like to maybe wander into those areas where we're not as sure of ourselves.
There's
the
actually,
one thing I want to throw out is that there's like several different cancers. So to say the word cancer, it is general. So maybe I was quoting a type of cancer that chemotherapy is not particularly effective against.
And there certainly are some.
I was just going to say, I've seen evidence where there was this, you know, a doctor presenting that the combination of either chemo and maybe even radiation, but I think it was just chemo and cannabis together actually is super beneficial, because the cannabis helps, you know, detract the negative effects of the chemotherapy and help the body just overall. So, you know, maybe there's a coexistence that is even better than independent.
Definitely.
Without a doubt. I mean, chemotherapy and radiation treatments are brutal on your body. And some people, sometimes that alone, the patient just isn't strong enough to sort of get through it. And the whole process can be such a drag that can lead to their demise. So cannabis in a lot of cases helps people become strong enough to be able to sort of tolerate their treatments that would otherwise be sort of overwhelming to them. So
psychologically,
even when they die,
physiologically,
people overlook when somebody dies of cancer and they were using cannabis. So they say, hey, look, this is proof cannabis didn't work, or chemo didn't work, or this didn't work.
Oh, yeah.
The cannabis made them more comfortable for that month, week, year that they had to suffer through all those other really harsh radiation treatments and chemo treatments. So, and the last thing I'll say on it is, again, anecdotal story, but my track coach in college, he had prostate cancer. His dad died of prostate cancer. He did chemo and radiation, and it didn't. His dad did chemo and radiation, and it did not work for him. So he tried an alternative therapy, which is called proton therapy, which I believe is a more specific radiation. The way I've heard it described is they like shoot like a bullet, essentially, of radiation only goes like a few centimeters and it hits the tumor or whatever.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
And it's pretty popular here in San Diego, I know, at least. And he's still alive here, and well, 5 years after. And his dad made it less than a year. And I think prostate cancer is one of them that's very low survival rate. I know like testicular cancer, fortunately, has like a very high survival rate. I know like everybody back in the day rocked the Live Strong bracelets, at least I did. Lance Armstrong brought a lot of awareness to it, and a lot of progress I think was made. But it's one of those things that, like breast cancer, is also high survival rate. And I think partially because both of those sex organs in humans can be removed. And that gets rid of a lot of the cancer, where like blood cancers, bone cancers, brain cancers, and things like that. You can't just remove your brain or your blood. You know, it's a different fight. So cancer is an incredibly wide and difficult topic to talk about. And I think that we did it tonight with a lot of class, and maybe I probably offended and rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, but I appreciate everybody for being respectful and open-minded in such a difficult discussion, because this is one that I think is often not talked about because it's such a hard topic. Many of us have lost people.
It's near and dear to my heart, I know for sure.
It sucks. It really sucks when you lose somebody, especially to such a terrible thing.
You know,
so thank you guys.
that's why if there's even a hint, if it's true that RSO could prevent or you know, shrink tumors, I maintain that everybody should be eating some every day, and then it won't even get a chance to start. So And whether or not that's scientific or not, I think you should do it anyway. So there.
I think it's a preventative
Yeah.
medicine. I'll agree with it on that front. And I do believe that if it can potentially cure it, then maybe it can prevent it from ever springing up. And I think the thing is, maybe we have it and we don't know it. Maybe you have stage 1, maybe you have stage 2, and
Yeah.
it starts killing it before stage 3, before you ever notice a lump, before you ever notice that thing. So I think it can help a lot.
I'm gonna take this time too to jump out too, but before that, I'm gonna throw in my little Spartan woo woo, because you know you guys got me in my feels today. But I really think that the power of the RSO or cannabis oil, we'll call it whatever the fuck we want to call it. I really think the power there too is in the mind. You're offering somebody hope where they had none, and it gives them something to fight for, and that's really the secret power there. And then obviously the medicinal power that comes with it actually does help. But I think people want to have to heal. They want to have to believe that they're going to get through it. What's that effect called where they when they do all these studies, the placebo effect is real. And if you really believe that something's going to work, that goes a long fucking way. It really does.
Agreed.
I've seen it in my life.
It's stronger than most medicines. That's why most medicines don't become a medicine, is they can't beat the placebo effect. That's what it has to be tested
Agreed.
against. And people
Yeah.
so often think the placebo is making them better. You have to be a really good medicine to become like a tested true medicine. So
Yeah, and there's no greater feeling in my life than somebody coming back healed. That's just fucking is so touching. So, I mean, just have a positive outlook and give them a reason to fight. And usually they do the rest, and you just got to give them the medicine. So I'm gonna fucking cry like a baby. So I'm gonna get the fuck out of here, guys. But I'm headed to the Mission Bros Grow Show. Catch me there. I'm talking to Dankovich, and God bless him because he donated me a bunch of hemp that he grew, and I've made some CBD hemp RSO that I passed out a bunch to like Red, who just had a tooth surgery. So hopefully that's gonna help him. And he's using it with his family, passing out to family members who don't have any experience with cannabis, but they're willing to try something that's CBD. So that shit just fucking makes me happy, and it's like soul food to me. So that's what we're going to be talking about next month. So catch me out there. Thanks, guys. Awesome hanging with you, and we'll see you next week.
Peace
peace
out,
and love,
Spartan.
Spartan.
Or love
Yeah.
Spartan.
Always good
Bros
having
out.
you. And definitely check out the Michigan Bros Grow Show and Dankovich. He's a great dude. I love following him over there, watching his cat run around his hemp farm and making some good medicine for the people out there. Cheers to Dankovich and to Spartan Grown. He's been a longtime advocate of RSO and the power of that medicine. And I know him and I probably took off 80% of the show tonight, but it was a short panel, and the rest of these guys are so polite that they just let us ramble. So I appreciate you all being here. I know we've got a few minutes left, and we did have a few questions earlier. So, Doc, I wanted to throw this one to you because it was specifically something that we talked about earlier. Crack Babies DWC says, at Cheap Home Grow for Doc. So, what about autos on a 24-0 schedule? So, 24 hours on, 0 off schedule at 1,000 ppfd. It's like 84 moles. Is that okay? And I'm sure you may have gotten to that in the chat earlier, but for the
I
podcast
didn't.
listeners,
I actually missed that. I missed that chat. You know, for starters, 1,000 is sort of the maximum for like a spot in your canopy. If you're talking about an average of 1,000 micromoles, you're already really pushing at the limits there. But yeah, other than that caveat, if the plant can handle it for a few seconds, well, it's not totally true, but if it can handle it properly for a few seconds, then it can handle it the whole time. You know, plants can deal with light that's too intense for shorter periods of time and not very efficiently. They're not sort of taking advantage of that light, they're avoiding it. And you know, right at 1,000, depending on your CO2 levels, I think you'd probably be pushing it. If you had an average ppfd at 1,000 micromoles per square meter, I think you'd probably be pushing it. This is something I've thought about a lot because of the way that I test lights. I always set the maximum ppfd to be 1,000, which is fine. But as lights become sort of better able to keep uniformity across the canopy, and we're getting average ppfds now above 900, I've been questioning, you know, this is going to be putting a lot of pressure on people's plants. I liken it a little bit. Increasing your ppfd towards the limits is like driving a sports car, you know, along the Pacific Coast Highway on the cliffs above the ocean. there's a limit to how fast you can go, but if you go right up against that limit, you're pretty likely to drive off the edge of the road into the ocean. If you back off a little bit, you often can get there sort of faster in the end. But other than that, yeah, if it's a sustainable PPFD for 12 hours or for 18 hours, it will be a sustainable PPFD for 24 hours. And that's one of the big advantages that autoflowers do have, particularly in, returns to space. In grow operations where returns to space are so important, more important than returns to electricity or returns to other sort of inputs that you would be sensitive marginal inputs, then you can get more production just because you can crank that the DLI up so high with autoflowers during the flowering period, because you can get them, average of 1,000, like you're saying, or average of 900 for 24 hours instead of only for 12 hours. So you can literally double the quantum load that the plant's able to harvest.
They certainly have a use in the commercial space. I won't argue that at all. I think Mephisto, they did their own little tests, but that's what kind of started them on the autoflower breeding side of things. And
yeah,
I've just seen,
the commercial growers are too afraid of the variability of the crop. I mean, that's the biggest thing right now that's holding it back, is they want to be able to, market large quantities of cannabis as being fairly identical. And when you're growing clones, you can do that. You'll have, hundreds of pounds of one particular strain. Whereas if you're growing autos, growers I've talked to, do we have to keep each plant separate? Are we going to be able to intermingle all of this? Is it going to be similar enough? What's the phenotypic variation? Those things. So I think as that dials in the breeding, and as growers become more confident in the consistency of the seeds, that commercial growers will start switching over to that in larger numbers.
I had some Three Bears OG concentrate this past year, which is a autoflower in the California market, which showed me that there are commercial growers actually currently doing it. So not to say that that's the main thing, it's still 99% photo period clones, and they're doing it how most of us are used to seeing commercial, but it is interesting. And this isn't like a plug, because I'm not sponsored by either Mephisto Genetics or JBC Seed Bank, but if you're looking for Mephisto's genetics, which a lot of people that like autoflowers are, JBC Seeds has a lot of their kind of famous ones right now. The Creme de la Creme, the Three Bears OG, and a few others got restocked pretty recently. And I'm not buying seeds right now, but when I happen to be on their website looking for somebody else, I saw them. So I figured I'd pass that little note on to our community here, because I know we've got a lot of growers out there that love buying and popping seeds. So I figure who better than our listeners to go and get some really good seeds. And that's one of the breeders. Again, people always ask me who I approve of. That's an autoflower breeder out there that I'm a big fan of, and have smoked a lot of their stuff and been fond of it. And I wouldn't have said that about autoflowers 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So I'm happy to say that it has changed so much thanks to Mephisto's genetics and people like Gnome Automatics and others out there who are doing really good work. So we're about 8 minutes to the final part of the show, but there's only 4 of us, so our wrap up will be relatively short. So we've got one question that we didn't get to earlier. Sour Diesel Tangi asks, well, we probably got a bunch of questions we didn't answer earlier. I was totally wrapped up in the conversation tonight as usual, but I saw the other panelists holding it down on the chat. And Sour Diesel Tangi asks, at Cheap Home Grow, this was about stress earlier, what about additives that induce a stress response? Winter frost, for example. So I've heard of winter frost, never personally used it. Not sure if anybody else on the panel has, but I know it's one of those things used at the end of harvest. But if it's anything like, I ran Heavy 16 for a little while, and they had a product called Finish, which reminds me a lot of winter frost. And I'd have to pull up winter frost and pull up the MSDS, and we've only got a few minutes left, so I'm not actually going to do that. But I would guess it's like soluble potash and like water for the most part. And it's more of like a flushing agent, and they're just trying to get your EC or ppms down towards the end. And I'd be surprised if there was like a specific chemical or something in there that they have done testing behind to find out that it produces stress within the plant and is creating more trichome coverage. But maybe they have, because I know there's other stuff out there that people like to try and introduce and claim that it makes a stress response, like some chitin products. So I'm interested to hear if Doc or maybe anybody else has thoughts on the winter frost stress response.
Somebody asked earlier about whether beneficials could sort of stimulate beneficial effects of the plant. And I replied sort of similarly that, good bug or bad bug, if it does good thing for plant, it is good bug. And that's a Deng Xiaoping reference for the two of you who listen and know what that means. Basically, they have the same exoskeleton. They have chitin, like you said, Jack, and other substances that the plants will recognize and associate because they've co-evolved to do so with an insect or a mite, or maybe even a beneficial fungus. And even if they're doing beneficial stuff, the physiology is still like, hey, that's chitin. Let me just upregulate these genes in case we get, in case there's a fungal pathogen. To sort of say it sort of generally. So absolutely, I think that there's definitely many examples of that.
With this product in particular, I have not used winter frost myself. I'm familiar with sort of what they're trying to do there. It's tough to say. I'm not a fan. I'm not interested in sort of using it myself. I can't necessarily shoot sort of a hole in it. There's reasons it could provoke a response in the plant, certainly, and some growers might find that response to be desirable. It's always also mitigated by the fact, and this sort of applies to what we were talking about in chat earlier, like putting the plants in darkness or these other things that you do towards the end that, you've already grown the plants and they're already there. So the chances of really screwing something up are slightly diminished at the end of the grow. But these products, I was advising loosely a grower in sort of the gray market who was interested in these kinds of things. He was interested in anything that just gave the bud more bag appeal, and he didn't really care if it made the cannabis higher quality or better smoke or something. He just wanted to sort of be able to sell it better. And I think if that's sort of what you're looking for in your crop, then that product might be something to check out. But other than that, I'm not convinced. That's my take, at least.
There was one called Terpinator for a while too, but a lot of people around here tried it and they claimed it made a lot of the stuff taste the same. So I'm thinking it was kind of like the flavored lines of Botanicare, where it was kind of like chemically pushing some flavors into the plant. I don't know how they're doing that, but it does bring a flavor out. And like we mentioned many times in the past, I don't know if that's the best way to do it. This is the MSDS sheet, but I'm not finding, total nitrogen, 0.2, phosphate, potash. Okay.
Yeah, it's just the necessary NPK stuff that they're listing. Not sure.
I haven't seen any actual, ever since I went to SDS sheet, it used to be MS, like material safety data sheet. Now it's this safety data sheet. And I feel like they're not disclosing a lot of stuff anymore. Like I used to be able to scroll down and it would be like exactly what the breakdown is. It'd be like this % of this chemical or this % of that chemical. But this is just like, avoid eye contact. And if you get it in your eyes, wash with water or whatever, unfortunate, but
yeah.
A little bit more NPK than the Finnish product that I was referencing from Heavy 16. So I was wrong. And I wanted to confirm it, but we've got 2 minutes left. So I want to pass it over to first Dr. MJ for final thoughts and shout out.
Yeah, I'll just say this. I think at that point, when you're a few days away from harvest too, I think a lot of it's baked in at that point. I don't think you might be able to spike the frost factor on your buds or something, but I don't think you're going to actually improve quality one way or the other. So that's my 2 cents on that. This was a fun show. We touched on a lot of different things. We sort of wandered off into some other territory, but as always, we came back, and I hope the audience enjoys the show. I'm Dr. MJ Coco. We are doing a big seed giveaway tomorrow on Coco for Cannabis, and everybody that's registered for the Spring Autoflower Challenge is eligible for that. So go to the cocoforcannabis.com/challenge and get registered. We're also doing a big Grower Love giveaway this month on April 20th. we're giving away the Photon Tech XT 1000 watt CO2 Pro, giant beast of a grow light. You can register for that on the deals and discounts page at Cocoa for Cannabis. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the Spring Wildflower Challenge. I hope you guys all grow with us. And I am Dr. MJ Coco. I will see you again next week.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us and keeping us grounded at certain aspects of the conversation for sure. Much needed and well appreciated, and always appreciated with all that good information. And check out his website and all the upcoming challenges and stuff like that. You could get yourself some free seeds, free lights, all that good stuff for growing. But next up, Matthew Gates.
Personally, I do like to pioneer into those very subject matter, but I definitely agree that it was fun to be sort of a grounding force. And also, it was also very fun to see the chat and the various topics that people were talking about there as well, like it often is. And I'm sure that I will talk more about some interesting sort of bleeding edge technologies with regards to IPM in various places, like my YouTube channel, Zenthanol, which you can check out, which is the same place where I'm commenting on the live chat. You can also find me on Instagram and Twitter at SyncAngel for both of those. And you can also subscribe to my Patreon for as little as $1 USD. You can be part of a group of, we just passed 100 people on the Patreon, on the Discord. So if you're interested in getting basic and advanced answers to various questions, you can check us out there as well. And I'm curious to see more people and answer more questions to people, because it's very hard to keep up with it on Instagram chat and comments and such.
I would say at some point it becomes impossible. I mean, once you get up and above 10,000 followers or whatever it is, at a certain point, one person can't do it all. And it's nice to have that little niche support group where you can get people's questions answered quickly and support the people who are supporting you. And even if it's just a little bit. So with that said, next up, the American one.
Hey, Jack, thanks for hosting. And I'll just say I never used that winter frost. Yeah, I'm unfamiliar with it, so I wouldn't be able to comment on that one. And yeah, it was really good today. We had quite a diverse subject matter, and it was all interesting. And it's always good chatting it with Doc, Matthew, and everybody else who ends up showing up, Spartan. And yeah, I'm missing ATG. I hope he makes it back soon. Shout out to him. Shout out to all members, previous members, and ones that didn't make it. And yeah, I'm the American one on the YouTube, and the American one _with_ Keens on the IG if you want to hit me up or check out some of my plants. And yeah, peace out, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us. And I guess I'm last. So Jack Greenstock, I'm your host. You can find me at Jack Greenstock on Instagram, Jack_Greenstock on Twitter. Email jackgreenstock47@gmail.com, or hit me up on my website, 50strains.com, if you're looking for a copy of 50 Strains of Green. But thank you all for listening. This was a touchy subject night at a few moments there. So I apologize if we offended anybody, but I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I'm just trying to be honest with the research that I've come across and seen. So I do encourage anybody to send me research that speaks to the opposite if you disagree. I'd love to look into it and further inform myself and educate myself always on cannabis or other topics like we touched on this evening. So without further to be said, I look forward to seeing you all next week, and I appreciate everybody listening both here live on YouTube and on the podcast. And thank you all to the panel who showed up this week. Much love to you, and much love to Aaron, who's working his ass off out there in Oklahoma, building it up. So cheers, y'all. See you next week.
Grow love, Jack, and grow love, everyone.
See you, everyone.